Hey, my name is Gaia Athena and in this video I'm giving you my May wrap-up. In May I've read quite a few books, so let's just get into it. Timestamps will be down below. The first book I read in May was Deathnote Volume 5 by Tsugumi, Ohba and Takeshi Obata. This is Volume 5 in the Deathnote series. In this manga series, Light gets what is known as a death note, and when you write a person's name in the death note, that person dies. I've been reading one volume each month. This month it was May, so I read Volume 5, but I liked it. I'm liking the series quite a lot. I've watched most of the anime previously, but not all of it. We'll get to that. That I decided actually to read the rest of the series this month as well. But first I read a couple other books, so we'll get back to the series. Then I read Fruits Basket Collector's Edition Volume 11 by Natsuki Takaya. And I also read Fruits Basket Collector's Edition Volume 12, which finished off the series. So Book 11 contains volumes 21 and 22 of the original volumes, and Book Collector's Edition 12 contains volume 23 of the original volumes, as well as some extras. I have been reading this series for a while, and now I finally finished it off. I decided to read these two books. I was planning to read them, I think, in April, but I didn't quite feel like it. Anyway, this series is about the family called the Soma family, and a lot of the Soma family members are cursed. I've mentioned this series before. I enjoyed finishing it off. I like these 3 original volumes, but the extras in this, I was a little bit less interested in it, in that. But yeah, this was pretty good. If you want to know more about this series, maybe check out some of the other videos that I talked about this series in. We got a lot of books to get through, so I'm just trying to. So this video isn't endlessly long. Then I read Volume 6 of Deathnote, again by the same authors as Volume 5. I'll talk about this when I come to finish off the rest of the series. Again, an excellent volume. I really liked it. The next book I finished is Artemis Fowl by Eoin Colfer. This is book 1 in a middle grade fantasy science fiction-y kind of series. And I buddy read this with Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe. We both really liked this book. It was a reread for her. Artemis Fowl is a 12-year-old criminal genius, and yeah, I find it a bit difficult to explain this series, but I really liked this first book. It was quite good and different to what I thought was going to be like. I also read book 2 this month, but we'll get to it because I talk about my books in the order that I read them in. So this was a really good. Now we get to the rest of the Deathnote volumes. So we have Volume 7, Volume 8, Volume 9, Volume 10, Volume 11, and Volume 12, which finishes off the series. I have the box set, so I also got in that Volume 13, which is how to read the Deathnote series. It's just kind of a book with extras, so I'll talk about that in a minute, but first I'm going to talk about the series as a whole. I'll hold off Volume 12 for that. I really liked this manga series. It was really good. I will say that it's not something that I could read while I'm like very tired, because it does take a bit of a brain power, because there are several characters in this series that are quite like smart, and so but yeah, I found it really good. A few years ago I watched about 2/3 of the anime with my boyfriend, but then at some point I got confused, so I didn't want to watch it anymore. And reading the manga and then watching the anime after that, it was on Netflix, so rather than getting out old DVDs, I actually watched it on Netflix. And it turns out that there was one episode we were watching about 2/3-ish of the way through the anime, which was summarizing a lot of the stuff that had happened. And at that time we thought that that was like a summary episode, because a lot of anime, according to my partner, my boyfriend, have such an episode for people who come in halfway through the series. So we thought it was all going to be old information, so we skipped the episode. Now reading the manga and then rewatching the anime after I finished the manga. I did watch a whole episode, and it turned out about like the last quarter of the episode had a few minutes of new information, which explains why I got confused when we skipped that episode and went on to the next one, because I was just missing those vital bits of information that obviously were in the manga, because I didn't skip anything in the manga, I just kept reading. So, mystery solved. But yeah, I really like this series. And I think it's definitely one that will be fun to reread the manga at some point. I would kind of classify it as, like it has some thrillery aspects, but there is also like some kind of paranormal aspect in the sense that these death notes belong to Shinigami, who are Japanese death gods, who have death notes. And so, for example, here is the Shinigami Ryuk, and so yeah, there is an element of that in the series. So then I read volume 13, which is how to read the Death Note series. This is not necessary to enjoy the rest of the series, but I really liked this extra volume that came with my box set because it explains a lot. Now, some of these extras were more interesting than others, but I thought most of them were really interesting. It has some extra bits about pretty much anything you can think of. Some interviews with the authors, more things about the characters, all the Death Note rules, things about the Shinigami, some question and answers, a timeline, like a timeline of where each Death Note is, like quite in depth. That cleared up some things for me that I was maybe a little bit more hazy about. So I think that it added to my overall understanding of the series. So yeah, I like that it came with my box set. Overall then, I quite enjoyed this volume and this series. Sorry, my dog just wanted to come in and wanted to be pet. So the next book I read is A Song for Tomorrow by Alice Peterson. I read this book because, well, I mean, I had already bought it. Charlotte from Books and Bargains, she recommended this book in one of her videos a while ago, so I bought it when I found it for a good deal. But I read it now because last month in April I read 5 Feet Apart, which has 2 characters in it with CF or cystic fibrosis, but the representation wasn't quite on point according to the On Voices reviews I read. And so Charlotte told me that this book had a lot better representation. She's a nurse. And actually this book is based on the life of an actual person, Alice, and she had cystic fibrosis, and this book is based on part of her life. So it is fiction, but it's based on an actual person, if that makes sense. This book is about Alice. She has CF and she wants to be a singer, and I love this book. This was really good. So the book is written from 3 points of view. We have Alice's point of view, which is written in first person present tense for the most part. Then we have Tom's point of view, and so before each chapter it will tell you whose point of view we're seeing. So Tom's chapters are written in third person present tense. The third perspective, which is from Mary's perspective, and it's her diary that we're seeing, which is written in first person present and past tense. So I'm just mentioning that in case you don't like books in which some chapters are in first person, others are in third person, depending on whose perspective you read in, because I read some of the reviews and I think at least one of the people there said that they didn't like that. I liked it. I've read other books as well that have done this, but well, I just thought I'd point it out. This was a really good read. It was also heartbreaking, and also I've read like 10 books since this one, so my memory is a little bit more hazy, but yeah, I really liked this book. And I have 2 other books by Alice Peterson on my TBR, so I plan to read those at some point. So yeah, this was a really good. Now we get to the second pile I have here. The next book that I finished was, oh, can you see that? STEM, an autistic anthology, edited by Lizzie Huxley-Jones. I don't know if this book is available everywhere. This is a British book that was crowdfunded on Unbound, and I helped like crowdfund the release of this book. So I'm not sure if you can actually buy this book if you don't live in the UK or how that works. Maybe at least the ebook, but I don't know. Anyway, so this has, I think, about 18 different pieces, but it could be a slightly different number, by a number of different autistic authors. So some of this is fiction and some of it is non-fiction. So it's like a variety of genres, if that makes sense. So some things are more like essays and others are more like short stories, and so it's a real mixture. I really liked most of these pieces. The only piece I wasn't such a fan of was actually the first one. Not the introduction, I'm not counting as a piece, but... So here is a list of the pieces. I hope you can see that. You want to pause if you want to. And so the first one I found a bit confusing. I wasn't as much a fan of that one. It started off a bit disappointing for me, but I quite liked the rest of the pieces. So overall, I'm still really happy with this book. It was just one piece was not as much my thing, if that makes sense. I also really liked that there was a variety of things. There are also a few pieces that are art or illustrations. Yeah, I think this is definitely an anthology I would like to reread in the future. At the end of the book, it has more details about each of these contributors. And I also really like that editor in the introduction mentions that the book contains a range of ages, genders, sexualities and life experiences. The majority of the contributors in this book are white, and she says that autism in people of color is dramatically underrepresented and underdiagnosed because the criteria are built around white cis boys. And institutional racism, those two things combined together leads to a delay of diagnoses for people of color. And I really like that she addressed this. She says it's possible that this, including her own whiteness, contributed to a lower proportion of pictures from people of color. However, she says if you wish to read more about autistic people of color, there's this other anthology that she fully recommends, which is All the Weight of Our Dreams. Well, I'm just gonna put this here. Upon reading that, I immediately went and ordered this anthology. And actually in the back, there is a list of books written by autistic authors, including autistic characters that the author recommends. So naturally I went and checked out all of these. I have read several of them and really liked them. And there are more of those recommendations available on the editor's website. So I also looked at those because I love getting recommendations for books written by an autistic person and possibly featuring an autistic character and such. If it's fiction, if it's non-fiction, you know, it's like a memoir and such. So I loved getting more recommendations. So yeah, overall, I really liked this. There was only one piece in it that I liked less, and definitely something to reread in the future. If it bothers you that it's like fiction mixed with non-fiction in all sorts of genres, I can imagine that. It wasn't bothersome for me, but at the beginning of each piece you start reading, and then I did wonder, is this fiction or non-fiction, until you get to the point where you can tell that. May was a mental health month, and so there was a readathon called the Mental Healthathon, and I read a couple of books because of this readathon. I don't really do readathons much because I'm very much a mood reader, but I did manage to read a couple of books, so yeah. So the first book that I picked up was The Million Pieces of Nina Gill by Emma Smith-Barton. I bought this book last year after the Mental Healthathon was over, because Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books, she is one of the hosts of the Mental Healthathon. She created it, and she read this book last year during the Mental Healthathon, and she loved it, and so I went and bought it then. I ordered it. And so now, this year for the Mental Healthathon, this was the group book. So I read it. This is a young adult contemporary. This is about Nina, and her brother has disappeared without a trace, and so the book takes place some while after that. She is still grieving. So this was really excellent mental health representation of grief and some other aspects that I don't know if would be considered spoilers or not, because I can't remember whereabouts in the book that happens. But if you do want to know, feel free to ask me, I'll look it up. Also, Nina's mother, if I'm not mistaken, is Pakistani. I really liked this. It was a quick read, and I found it really, really good. Sometimes Nina makes some decisions that I didn't think were good decisions, but considering, you know, that she's grieving and depressed and like, you know, she's just trying to find answers. And so yeah, anyway, I liked this book. I actually liked a lot of the books that I read this month. So the next book I finished is The Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman. This is book 3 in the His Dark Materials trilogy. This was a buddy read with Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures, Emily from Novelle Novels, and Charlie from Charlie Brook. And this finished off the trilogy. It is the biggest book of the 3, so we took, I think, about 10 days to read this, because it is over 500 pages, my copy at least, and we all really enjoyed this. It was really nice to finish off this trilogy. This is a fantasy series. I thought it was middle grade, but some people are saying more it's young adult. So it would definitely be for like the younger side of young adult, but I think it also depends on like what age range exactly you classify as young adult. But anyway, I've classified it as middle grade, but you know, well, children's actually, because I don't call things middle grade. But yeah, it's a bit difficult to give a synopsis for this whole series, because I don't quite remember like what bit of the first book is like the synopsis I should give, sort of thing. But this was really magical. This is the film cover. When I bought this, I didn't actually realize it was the film cover, but yeah, really good series. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Not the most coherent video I've ever done. I do hope, however, that I will have some more energy sometime, that I can make some different kind of videos, because as much as I love doing my wrap-ups, I do think that people might like to see also different videos from me. So, and I would like to do that sometime. But yeah, I have a lack of energy and these are difficult times. So the next book I picked up was because of Mental Health-a-thon, and that was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This was one of the hosts' pick for Mental Health-a-thon. This was Simone's pick, I believe, from me, Simone I. And I actually have this copy because I won the giveaway from Charlotte by Booksandlala, so thank you, Charlotte. And I decided to give this book a try for the Mental Health-a-thon now, because it seemed like a good time to try it. I had been a bit hesitant before because one of my friends, acquaintances, Karen, she DNF'd this book, and so I was a bit hesitant, but other people have said that they really liked it, so, and I liked it too. In the beginning of the book, it took me a bit of time to get into it, because there are some English words in here that I was not familiar with, and when that happens a lot in a story, it takes me out of the story. It makes me having to stop and look things up if I can't infer from context. In some cases it doesn't matter as much, in some cases I'm just curious. I think that was just more me though, not having English as my first language, because other people who have read this book whose first language is English, I don't remember anyone mentioning that they struggled with the language or specific words. So it's probably just me, but yeah, so that's why in the beginning I had a bit of time to get into it. Also, I was reading, so I was buddy reading this book. I read about 50 pages a day, and then I read these two also at the same time. So I was reading these 3 books at the same time, which probably didn't really help with my understanding. But then one day I was too tired to read in Eleanor Oliphant's Completely Fine because of the language use and such. So I decided to just read in The Million Pieces of Nina Gale, which I then finished. And then I could fully focus on Eleanor Oliphant's Completely Fine. So the second half of this book went by a lot quicker. I was more into the story. And I really liked this. And the ending surprised me. So, yeah. So this book is also related to mental health. Eleanor Oliphant, here's a synopsis. It says Eleanor Oliphant leads a simple life. She has very strict routines that she does the same thing each week, sort of thing. She wears the same clothes to work, eats the same meal for lunch, and buys the same 2 bottles of vodka to drink every weekend. Eleanor Oliphant is happy. She does spend a lot of time on her own. Anyway, there are trigger warnings for this. I like this book, particularly like later on in the book when you find out a bit more about Eleanor and her past, and yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah, sorry if I'm going through things a bit fast, but I've read 28 books in May, so I'm trying to have this video hopefully not take too long. So I'm not giving that much detail per book, and I'm sorry about that. If you do want more detail, feel free to ask me. The next book I read is Tommie in de Zorg by Tommie Niessen. This is a Dutch memoir written by, I'm gonna have to translate this, a healthcare worker. He mainly works with elderly people. And my mum was given this book through work. She works at a healthcare organization, for a healthcare organization. And so she was given this book through work, and when she'd read it, she gave it to me, thinking that I might like it, and I did. I think you can really tell how much Tommie cares about his clients, and yeah, I really liked seeing that. So the book has short chapters that are only 1 or 2 or couple pages each. Not often 1 page, usually 2 or 3 or something like that. I really liked it, and I also liked finding out actually that he lives or works in a similar area as that I live, so that's nice. I live in the southeast of the Netherlands, and yeah, I really liked it. Then I read a similar memoir. This is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Adam Kay was a junior doctor in the NHS in Britain, in the United Kingdom. It's similar in the sense that it's also a memoir about someone working in healthcare. I bought this book a while ago based on, several people actually have recommended this book, but I ordered it after Emily from Novelle Novels talked about it because she loved it, and so I had to have it. And this was an excellent memoir. It was interesting, it was also very funny. So Adam worked, and I have to say now how I can say this in English, in the area of the hospital where people give birth, and a labor ward kind of thing. It's more than that, but I'm not quite sure of the exact words right now in English. But so if you are sensitive to, let's say, medical terminology or anything, keep that in mind. The author explains a lot of procedures and terms in footnotes. So often at the end of the page, well, that one was not actually, there is a footnote, and it will give you a little bit more information about the medical situation. On occasion there's funny bits in there as well. So yeah, I really like this. I thought it was really funny. It also talks about the NHS, and obviously as someone who does not live in Britain, I don't know a whole lot about that situation. My partner is British, and well, he lives with me in the Netherlands now, but he lived in Britain until he moved here. So the book is divided up into chapters, and then each chapter has an introduction of like that function, and then it just starts with like dates and like what happened. All the people in here have like different names and stuff, so you can't like, identify and people and such. But I thought this was really interesting, really funny. I really, yeah, it was just brilliant, yeah. But it is also so the last entries in this book are from 2010. The book itself was published in 2017, not this edition maybe, but the hardcover. And it's very worrying to me, you know, reading about this the situation in the NHS and how there's like many budget cuts and everything. How these workers are so underappreciated. Now in the Netherlands we have a different healthcare system, which has its own difficulties and issues, which Tommie talks a bit about in his memoir. My mum works at a healthcare organisation, so she knows quite a bit about things, how it goes here, I mean, yeah, in Netherlands. So the next book that I read was Artemis Fowl book 2, which in Dutch is called De Russische Connectie by Eoin Colfer. The English title for this is The Arctic Incident, and yes, I'm acting so weird because this is a second-hand copy that I bought, and when I started reading it, I again buddy read this with Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe, and we both liked this book. We liked it a bit less than the first book, but we still really liked it. For me, what I did not like about this book was my reading experience, because I can smell it right now. This book, I think, belonged to someone who had a cat, and so when I started to read this book, after I finished, I had a very bad asthma attack, which I haven't had that bad in years. So I put the book in the freezer for 24 hours. It was still difficult after that, just not quite as bad. So every day I would read my pages and put it back in the freezer after I was done. And so it's lived in the freezer up to now when I needed it for this wrap up, but I'm gonna go and put it in this plastic bag again so I don't have to like smell it and start the cough and such. So we're just gonna pretend this is the book and that cover, because I really liked the story. It was just the reading experience, which could have happened with any book. I've never had this happen before. I have bought and read plenty of secondhand books, but it's never happened like this before. So I must have been lucky. But from now on, though, any book that I buy secondhand will maybe spend first 24 hours in the freezer before I go and touch it and read it, put it on my shelves and all that. Because this was not fun. I mean, it already smells pretty bad, but it was not a fun experience, which is not, again, not a fault of the book or anything. I didn't realize, when I bought this copy, I bought it and put it away. I didn't notice it much at the time, but yeah. Hopefully the rest of the books won't be as much difficult to read. Book 3, which I'm planning to read in June, again a buddy read with from Olivia's Catastrophe. I also bought secondhand, but from a different place, so hopefully that will be okay. It smells better at least. And the other, most of the other books I think are either from library sales, or I think one book I actually bought new. So hopefully it won't be an issue with the rest of the books or any other books that I read from now on. But yeah, for future purchases, they will be spending time in the freezer if they were bought second hand from a shop or person. So I guess I'm lucky this didn't happen before, because I am very allergic to cats and horses and many other things. Yeah. Again, I did like the book. It was just, this copy is just, if it wasn't part of a series or anything, my mum said just throw it out, but you know, it's part of the series, and if I get rid of this one, the series won't be complete anymore. But if I do find another copy that, you know, doesn't cost too much, I can replace this copy. But obviously with the pandemic, I am not going out book shopping anytime soon, so yeah, we shall put that aside now. The next book that I read was The Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. This is kind of the follow-up to This Is Going to Hurt, but actually these are some diary entries around Christmas. So Adam talks about each of the like Christmas holidays that he worked at the hospital, and it's got a few some nice like Christmassy illustrations. I don't know if you can see that. When I bought this, I didn't realize, I bought this online, I didn't realize it was going to be this small in comparison to, well, let's say a normal size paperback. I'm not sure. This is Going to Hurt, and so it's not quite, it's not too bad actually when you see it like this, but it's not as small as I thought. But when I was holding it like this, it just feels relatively small in comparison to my hands, if that makes sense. I mean, when I bought this, it wasn't that expensive, so I guess that's also why. It's also not as long as the other book. It's a little shorter. I like this. I didn't like it as much as This Is Going to Hurt. It was a bit more of the same and a bit less funny. But I did like reading this, so yeah. Then I read Mind Your Head by Juno Dawson with advice from Dr. Olivia Hewitt and illustrated by Gemma Correll. This is a young adult book, information book about mental health, which I picked up because this month in May it was Mental Health-a-thon and Mental Health Month. I have actually more books by Juno Dawson on my TBR, and I have read one book by Gemma Correll. I like this book. I didn't learn a whole lot of new things because this is written for teenagers and I am not a teenager anymore. So I didn't learn lots of new things, a couple of things, but not lots. But that's okay, I wasn't like expecting that. I liked the illustrations, I liked how it was divided up into like different chapters, and oh, you can't really see that. I'll just see if I can sort of flick through it. I think in a lot of the chapters there are also bits from teenagers and like older people who have gone through that thing. The author also talks about her experiences, and there's also some intention for LGBT plus people, which the author is also part of that. So yeah, if you're a teenager, this could be pretty informative. If you're a lot older than that and already know a lot about mental health, this might not help you as much. But I still enjoyed my read and I read it pretty quickly, so yeah. Then I read Genderqueer, a graphic memoir by Maya Kobabe. I picked this book up specifically this month because EnbyBookClub are reading it this month. We're reading it in May, so I actually saved it for May because I had it for a while. And this is a graphic memoir about someone who finds out being genderqueer and pronouns, and I really liked this. I thought it was very good. I really liked the art, the talk and thoughts of gender, and yeah, I really liked this. Then I read Fleur Humeur by Megan McDonald with illustrations by Peter Reynolds. Although Fleur Humeur is the Dutch title, the original English title is Judy Moody. I have previously read books 5 and 4 in this series in that order, because that's the order that I found them in. So I found book 5, I think at a library sale, read book 5, found book 4, again I think at a library sale, read book 4, found book 1. I bought this in January of this year, so that was just before, you know, the pandemic and everything was happening. And so this month I felt like reading Judy Moody Book 1. They're all kind of standalone stories with the same characters, so it's not necessary to read them in order. This book is written for younger children, like I think about 7-year-olds, something like that. So it's definitely younger than middle grade, but and it's about Judy Moody, or well, they've translated the Fleur Humeur, who goes to school and has friends, and this was a nice read. Like, I didn't like it quite as much, I think, as books 5 and 4 in this series, but you know, if I had read this one first, and of course the author, usually authors grow the more books they write, so because I think this one was the author's debut novel, but I could be wrong. Yeah, this is a nice read for kids in this age group, and yeah, I enjoyed reading something a bit easier on my mind. Then I read The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum. I tried reading this book a while ago, but there was a scene in the beginning that confused me, and then recently I watched Booksandlala's vlog, and she read this book in her vlog that was just up just before I decided to read this book, sort of thing. And she read this book and she really liked it, so I thought, well, I'm gonna give it another go. I actually read The Weight of the Stars by Kay Ancrum last year, which I really liked. This is her debut book. It also has mental health representation. And yeah, I have this note in here to remind me that I also read the ebook short story, but I'll talk about that in a minute. This is the synopsis. It's about 2 boys, Jack and August, and Jack starts seeing like this other world overlaid on top of our world, if that makes sense. I really liked that, and you can see as, like, let's say Jack deteriorates, the pages get darker, and I really like that effect. The Weight of the Stars has a little bit of a similar effect, and that was genius to me. This was, again, a quick read, just like The Weight of the Stars, and I really enjoyed this, actually. That scene that I was confused about, it turns out that wasn't much important for the rest of the book, so also here's a picture on The Weight of the Stars. After finishing this book, I then read the ebook novella. I read that on my Kindle. That is called The Legend of the Golden Raven, and at the time that I got that from Amazon, it was free. I don't know if it still is free, I think so, but I'm not sure about that. And it talks about this book from another character's perspective. So this book is mostly written from August's perspective, and so the novella shows part of this book from Jack's perspective. I liked the novella, but I didn't feel like it added a lot of new insight to this story. So given that it was free, I didn't mind reading it. I don't regret reading it. I liked reading it, but I wouldn't have wanted to have paid lots of money for it, if that makes sense, because, you know, it didn't add much to the novel, and I much prefer the novel. But yeah, it was still, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this novel was really good. Okay, 2 books left now. Then I read To Night Owl from Dogfish by Holly Goldberg Sloan and Meg Wolitzer. And I read most of this book in one day. So I started this book in the evening and I read a few pages. And then the day after, we had a bit of a family issue. That meant I was not allowed to use the internet for a while. And my parents said that they would let me know when they were done using the internet, because my dad was having a radio interview and he was concerned that that would not go well if he didn't have like the full bandwidth. Anyway, but then they forgot to message me when they were done, so I spent the whole afternoon reading this book because I had no internet, or rather I didn't have internet, but I wasn't allowed to use it. And well, I'm a good girl, so when I'm told that I can't do that, then I don't. So I ended up finishing this whole book, most of it in one day. Anyway, now to tell you what it is about. It actually says it pretty well on the back. I don't know if you can see it. This is about two girls. They live in two different states in the United States, and their dads are dating. And so one girl emails the other, telling her about this, and so they email back and forth, and their dads want them to get along, so they send both of them to the same summer camp. Now the whole book is in epistles, not just between these two girls, but also with some of the different characters, but the whole book is like emails and letters and stuff. I think they call it epistolary, but I could be wrong. So this is how it, oh, can you see that? No, this is how it starts off. And I really like this book. It's middle grade. It managed to surprise me because there was a bit more to the story than I thought there was going to be. It was not just like the camp, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. I have actually read a book by Holly Gilbert Sloan, that's Counting by Sevens, which I really liked, and I have read a book by Meg Wolitzer, which was, I can't remember the title right now, which I liked alright. So yeah, this was a really nice read. Then we get to the last book I read in May, which is Momenten van, Verhalen over vroeger, by Deirdre Beneken, genaamd Kolmer, Loes en Hollander, and Annelies Bast, as well as a number of other people, because this book contains contribution from other people. This is a book that my mum was given through work, and after she read it, she gave it to me because she thought I might like it. It is a Dutch non-fiction book containing the stories and pictures of the past. So it's got a lot of older photos in it, along with various pieces, also some poetry. So I'll just, can you see that? Flick through it a bit so you have a bit of an idea of what it's like. It's about different subjects. Some pieces I found more interesting than others. It was a free book for me because my mum gave it to me, so yeah. So yeah, it was a nice read. And that finishes off all the books that I read in May. That was quite a lot. Obviously the Deathnote manga went by pretty quickly. So this is the piles that I've made now. The Deathnote manga, obviously, that reads pretty quickly. I can read a manga, you know, pretty quickly. It doesn't take as long to read. And then I had a couple of times where I read books because I could not do other things. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!